Hi, and welcome to the Art of Film Funding. I'm your co-host, Claire Papin, along with writer-producer Carol Dean, author of the best-selling book, The Art of Film Funding, and host of this show. Carol is the president of From the Heart Productions, a nonprofit organization that has supported filmmakers with the Roy W. Dean Grant, fiscal sponsorship, education, and resources for over 30 years. Carol also teaches the Learn Producing class. Each class features an industry expert guest instructor and is designed to give the information, guidance, and support to become a successful producer. You can learn more about this class and all of From the Heart Productions offerings at FromTheHeartProductions.com.
What happens after picture lock may determine whether your documentary disappears or finds its audience, wins awards, and begins earning money.
So glad you could join us on the Art of Film Funding podcast. I'm your co-host, Claire Papin, along with writer, producer, and author Carol Dean, president of From the Heart Productions. Today's guest is an extraordinary filmmaker whose career has been devoted to stories of courage, survival, injustice, and the resilience of the human spirit. Xackery Irving is a New York filmmaker whose films include American Chain Gang, which was nominated for Best Documentary at South by Southwest, the feature film Nothing Without You, which screened at the Santa Fe Film Festival, and his powerful Ukraine frontline documentary, Brace for Oblivion. Brace for Oblivion recently had its world premiere at the Galway Film Flaw, where it won the Best International Documentary Award. Remarkably, Galway was the first film festival to which Xackery submitted the documentary, and the film was accepted and honored with this prestigious award. For more than 30 years, Xackery has produced hundreds of hours of nonfiction programming for the New York Times Television, History, and National Geographic. His career includes 4 documentaries, an award-winning feature film, and decades of television production. For his work on Brace for Oblivion, Xackery was granted the prestigious p.g.a. mark by the Producers Guild of America. He currently serves as co-chair of the Employment Committee of the Producers Guild of America. During today's conversation, we will learn why Xackery dedicated 4 years of his life and much of his personal savings to documenting the war in Ukraine. We'll hear what it takes to market, find your audience, and get the film to audiences throughout the world. And Carol, you've known Xackery Irving since the early 1990s, is that right?
Yes, Claire. I met him when From the Heart presented its first Roy Dean film grant in New York at the National Arts Club. Xackery had pitched his film about the chain gang, and so I sat down, talked to him, and we became good friends. I believe the American Chain Gang film helped bring national attention to the heinous practice of chaining incarcerated men together, even when they were simply working outside or tending a garden. They were chained together. And so his film exposed something that the public needed to see, and I believe his work helped bring an end to that terrible injustice. So we've been friends for over 30 years, and throughout his life, he has shown tremendous courage and an unwavering commitment to bring the truth to audiences through documentary filmmaking. And now he's made another remarkable and really deeply important film. So welcome, Xackery.
Thank you so much, Claire and Carol. It's so fun to be back with you talking about independent filmmaking and the journey that we face once we've locked picture and are looking to share the film for discovery within the festival circuit.
Yes, this is the fun time. So I want to talk to you about what compelled you to enter the war, because in looking at some of your short videos, which I really appreciate, but you put together a lot of 2-minute videos so we get an idea of what's happening in the Ukrainian war. But one of them, there was this handsome Ukrainian soldier, and he said, I think you're crazy. Your is not at war and you can stay home. And we,
Well,
yeah,
yeah, you could stay home. We talked about in previous discussions about how the story chooses you. And I think this was a case where I really thought that I was choosing where I was going and how this thing would unfold. I initially entered Ukraine with not a clear idea of what the storytelling journey would be. Initially, I was going to be following journalists, war photographers, some that I knew, some I knew through friends and volunteers, but it turned into something in a different path. It was actually about the Ukrainians. I wasn't drawn to the war as much as I was drawn to the people and this incredibly compelling story of people within days of Russia's full-scale invasion, ordinary citizens that were making extraordinary decisions. Scientists, if you see the film, artists, students, engineers, former soldiers, all volunteering to defend their country overnight.
that's
And
amazing.
yeah, sorry, Carol, go ahead, please.
No, I think that's amazing. The whole country rose together as a unit.
It did, and over time, the story is of, my film is a portrait of seven of 100,000 that stepped up to shore the gap of an invasion. And in light of what the world was saying to them, which was, you're going to be facing erasure, oblivion, brace for it. And they took that that warning, I guess, was not as important as their values. And that resonated, I think, with most people in the world. You know, I felt there was an important story unfolding beneath the headlines, reading about it, something about it I just wanted to get closer to. And I knew that, Ukraine is not a country at war. It's a place, it's a home to people. And I felt like it would be so much better to tell the story from, initially my idea was to tell it from people who were helping by telling the story as journalists or photographers or volunteers. But what I really felt was the thing that resonated most with me was telling the story from the inside. And much of that experience is just clicked with me. And in making the film, once I understood what the narrative was going to be, it was something that followed through to today, which is the storytelling guides you from when you're formulating what the film might be as you're making it. You're kind of in this whirlwind of storytelling in the middle of it. But as you're finding your true north of what the story is as you're working on it, and most films take years, you're also creating a storyline that will communicate to your audience, your festival audience, and beyond. What resonates with you, what is truly powerful about it. And that, if you put that first, that's always going to be a good guiding principle for you as an independent filmmaker.
That's good advice. So let's get into what happens after picture lock. So, because many filmmakers believe finishing the edit is the end of the journey, but really it's the beginning of an entirely new chapter. So, what were your
Yeah.
first
Well,
decisions?
I'd like the idea to be that I batted 1,000 and the first time I submitted I got into a festival. That wasn't the case. But I could sort of say that, the a big thing to remember right now is this is probably the most competitive time for independent filmmakers, particularly when it comes to finding a place in in the in the community of in the film festival schedule. And so most people, what I used to think, Carol, is once you've got picture lock, you're kind of debuting your film to the world and it kind of unfolds in its own path. And that passive, semi-passive, you can't be passive when you're releasing something, but that idea that cream will rise to the top, you make the best film you can and it'll get recognized, that's probably was never a good way to think about it. And clearly now with thinking the responsibility is making the best film you can and the festival will find you, build it and it will come. It's now you should be thinking about it as this is graduation day, and your film is finished, but your job changes from that point forward completely. You're not just a filmmaker, you're kind of an entrepreneur. You're wearing a lot of hats, and those hats can be worn by people who are part of your team that you trust and know. But those responsibilities shift from filmmaker to strategist, marketer, publicist, coordinator for the festival rollout, and in my case, community builder. You're trying to you're trying to be kind of your own distributor from the moment of picture lock forward. You know, conversely, like back in the day, right, we would think that you just have to put it out into the field of for people to discover it. There was such an appetite in the 90s and 2000s for really great independent content to reach a hungry audience that wanted to hear and see new stories. And now it's a little different. You have to wear all those hats: strategist, marketer, publicist, coordinator of festival, and community builder, because you've got to, as we're going to talk more and more, and something you've talked about on your podcast, is you need to think about things as building. You're building a distribution um, stream. You're building a connection with your audience. It's a lot about building these days.
Well, how did you develop your festival strategy? Because there are thousands of film festivals. So, how did you decide which ones were right for your film?
Well, that's good. I think we probably your audience will relate to this. There are like basically there's more slots. There's more really great films than there are slots out there. In fact, the news was from Sundance last time. They have 160 slots. They had at least 160 slots. They're moving to Boulder. Maybe they'll have more. I don't know. And 16,000 entries. So that's 1% acceptance rate,
Right.
right?
Wow.
So, and that's for films that are, and many of them probably already have the programming committee has their eyes on them for various reasons from earlier on, whether they're films that went through the Sundance Institute or films that are going to be looked at probably in higher regard because of filmmakers that have played there before. You are you're looking at that scenario. So instead of necessarily, and don't prevent yourself from taking big swings at big festivals, but maybe a shift from what's the biggest festival, instead of asking yourself that, maybe start asking which festival is the right fit for your film. Because it's so competitive to be an independent filmmaker, you start with that question and you start thinking about what is the story of the rollout of your film. So, in doing that, you need to align what I would think is this is a relationship. And what are the festivals that are out there are best aligned with what your values of your film are, or what your qualities, where the salient points are, what story, qualities are there that relate to the festival you want to get into. And it's not just like, 1% chance, maybe less than 1% chance with most prestigious independent film festival in the world. Seems like maybe you're buying a lottery ticket, doesn't it? But
Yeah.
instead of, right, instead of thinking about that, think about your film festival entries as an investment and do your research. Find out what the goals of the festival are, what the ethos is, who the programmers are, what they've played before, and start to see how your film is a lot aligned with the potential film festivals you're submitting to. So be strategic, basically, in a way that's really authentic.
Well done. All right. Well, why did you choose Galway?
Galway was just a great fit for a lot of reasons. Number one, it's a festival that is well established. It was in its 38th year. It's the most prominent in Ireland. And Ireland's a great place to start for the film because of its large Ukrainian community and Ireland's support for Ukraine. So it just felt like a really good place to launch the film. Also, we talked about quality, what being aligned with the philosophy of a film festival. Well, Galway is, though it's an important festival that has a lot of attention from the film community. It's also just very grassroots. It's very open, and the team that was there to represent the film was very much like that. Came with, I was very lucky. I had James Feeney, the very talented editor, who came with us. Uh,
Oh,
we had, yeah, my co-producer, Rick Santos, who helped shape the film by watching several cuts and was my only contact while I was in Ukraine. Um, LB Kerr Gilman, who was helping coordinate and shape outreach and helping us connect and publicize the film. Someone I've known for years. When I went to film school, she and I became friends, and we've worked on each other's projects. So, I talked about all these hats you wear. It's, a place where you want to communicate to a film festival, you're going to bring some value. Sometimes that value is community. And the thing about Galway we found is community is really valued. So we were able to, though the staff is very very busy, we were able to come by and check in with them. And one of the things that we can talk about this in a little bit, but you always want to add value to your screening. And one of the things that we did was we were very lucky in having one of the surviving subjects, one of seven, come from the war zone in Ukraine and get permission from his commander to join us in Ireland.
oh, how
And
wonderful.
it resonated so well with the audiences, with the festival, and with Ukrainian community members, to have him be there as a part of our, not just to represent the team, Carol, but to be part of that team I mentioned. We were all there in it together to create this experience for the film, to represent the film, and to interact with this kind of open sense of community at Galway.
That's incredible. Well, tell me, how did you prepare for the world premiere?
Yeah, so well, it wasn't just buying a plane ticket and getting that DCP ready. It was preparing not just for the screening, but it was preparing an experience. So I should say that, one of the things should be thinking about your audience when you're getting ready and a festival said yes is beyond those preparations of how you get there and how your film gets there is, those um, hats you wear of publicist, strategist, coordinator, building this community. Think about those things and how you can do it. Two of my good friends who are very experienced and well-respected filmmakers, um, Patrick Farrelly and Kate O'Callahan, uh, have advised me throughout the years. And one of the things they said is what's important is you need to shift the focus from where your film, what what the festival can do for you and what you can do for the festival. Bums in seats is what they said in quotes. Bums in seats. Get the festival, uh, venue filled with people who, the festival likes it when you can promote the film and create this experience. So, part of the experience and part of this storytelling is what we would provide is not just a screening of a film that we're proud to show the world, but an introduction and a Q&A with someone who lives the experience, that lives the experience past the final frame of the film. And afterwards, we encouraged And beforehand, we encourage people to come and talk with us, and particularly his name is Bogdan Patel, Junior Lieutenant Bogdan Patel, to talk about what his experience is, facing the dangers of a war zone and what it's like to have grown up. He was 19 when we began the film. He's 23 now. So what we wanted to do is prepare for an experience, and that's what I would suggest everybody to do. As like Patrick and Kate says, don't ask what your festival can do for your film, but what your film can do for the festival. That's a really good guiding principle. Don't take for granted that once you've gotten to a film, it's all going to sort of launch from there. Be a
Yes.
part, be a partner and align with that festival that you've done your research to see that this is a good candidate for you submitting. Once you're there, go with that. See what's you have in line with it, and bring a lot of value to it.
Well, how did you attract press attention? Okay, that's really important.
Well, it's back to the storytelling. You're telling a story. The value you're bringing is something that we're also trying to bring with those videos you mentioned, the behind the scenes, the making of videos. We're creating a story of what the film is about. We're collecting stories from making it, but in resonating that you have a narrative to go to. So remember, journalists aren't covering movies, they're covering stories. So what's your story? Rather than just blasting a press release, you identify the reporters, the podcasts, the morning shows, the newspapers that care about, in this instance, Ukraine, documentary filmmaking, human rights, international affairs, the process of making a film. And so you're aligning what your story is with those press people, with those journalists, with those podcasters, and don't be shy. Reach out to them. They, they want to engage with their audience too. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that this this whole storytelling that you're doing, this value that you're bringing, it starts while you're making the film and while you're identifying what is important for the world to see as you're developing it. That carries forward, and so your story that you're trying to attract press attention with is, we have this film that's very important. It should probably always be, this is the story that's important to me, and this is why it might be important to your audience.
Excellent. Well, and so how did you build your community support? You went out to the community with your story to get them into the theater. Is that how you did it?
Exactly, and that's so key. We were really lucky. One of the journalists that connected with our film was Teresa Mannion, an ace reporter in RTE, and we had our film covered on the nightly news 6-1.
Oh,
And that was part of not just reaching out to her, but right away, we had help from people within the community, the Embassy of Ukraine in Ireland, um, Telegram and WhatsApp channels, local filmmakers like Kate and Patrick who could help us identify connections to that community and invite them to be there. So everything from seeing where things resonate. One discussion with one person will open up another discussion point, which is, you might find you connect with somebody on an Instagram thread. Do searches for us. It was Ukrainian community in Ireland. Do searches for other people that are posting that have a community. And one of the things we did was we recorded videos. These in the spirit of the behind the scenes videos, we recorded videos with the soldiers, Bogdan and the commander, who could not be there, but Bogdan could, in Ukrainian, saying, "Hey, the film's happening on this date and this time, July 10th at 2:25 p.m. Would love to see you," in Ukrainian. I'll be there, or I'd like to be there, depending on who was saying it, but speaking their language and encouraging them not just to come, but to have this experience we talk about, sense of community. So it's from a lot of different directions, and it's part of your building on the storytelling. You're creating new content, so to speak, that's very specific to the community support you're trying to build.
Well, and then when you screened it, how did you engage the audience? Because you tell us how you put that all together.
So once you have it as, I'm being very specific to our film, and it's related to Ukraine and human rights and international geopolitics, but essentially it's a story about human beings and people, and whether you care about any of that or not, we make a film that's about relationships and about people. That's an aside from your question, but that's also guiding us. So after we created this event, it's starting to be something more than that. You're beginning a relationship. You're furthering your relationship with the festival, who is kind enough to provide you a screen or two for your discovery. But that's really what film festivals provide, by and large, is discovery. And it's discovery by the people in that room. So you're creating a relationship. And I think about that in the intro and the Q&A. This film is for you. And you let them know that that this is something bigger than just the screening afterwards. We had Bogdan there, the filmmaker. I'm sorry, I think of him as a filmmaker, the subject of the film. And
Right.
we really use that to transform the discussion. So we entertained any questions about the making of the film, but we really want to transform that into discussion about what he was experiencing. Because while he was there for a few days, he was also going to be returning to his own journey. And we wanted to have that be something unique to that audience experience of our world premiere. So we talked, we listened, we met people before the screening. One of the messages we gave was, if you come a little earlier, we're all going to be here and we'd love to talk to you. And then encourage people afterwards in our Q&A. We're going to be outside. We're in Ireland. We're going to get a pint afterwards. Let's continue this relationship of filmmaker to audience, and really let's bring that line down of screen to film goer to something that is that's alive and continues.
Oh, that's brilliant. Now let's get into after you won the award. Were you able to use the award to attract more festivals or press coverage or screening partners?
Yeah, so many times it's easy to get in this trap of chasing laurels and awards. And though it's great to win an award, and I'm so honored, and I know everyone else is, um, it's important to keep in mind, as we're all filmmakers and on the same path, is to remember awards don't change your film. It seems like they do, but what they do is, keep in mind, they change the conversation around your project, around your film. So in our case, we have our world premiere and we want to play more places. We happened to win Best International Documentary, and it was a thrilling experience. But in getting this award, immediately we started sending a press release to let people know of this, because we want to have this experience that we're describing happen in be replicated. To have this, not just this screening, but this experience and this engagement and this relationship to expand. So right away, we started sending out emails, letting people know of the news, and also the narrative that we were there. We engaged with the community. We had a great turnout. We also had coverage on television, but we did that not to promote the film. We did that to continue this engagement. And what winning the award changed was, people were returning our emails quickly. Journalists became curious, and you're going to find new opportunities appear. But the film stands on its own. The film has to deliver. And filmmakers, I just say, invest in the festival itself. If you're going to be engaged, generous with your time, be be supportive, be engaged while you're at that festival. And it's really important to think about what winning that award's going to do, but follow through with your relationships you have with the audience that came to your film, the staff, the programmers, the community. remember that while you're still there, because those relationships can be as valuable as the award.
Did you capture the any of the email addresses of the people who attended?
That's such an important thing to do, Carol, and it's something I did not do. I got names, I got Instagram, I got contacts in other ways like WhatsApp and all those things. But you're right, that email list is as important as it was when we started this, and when I started, at least in the 90s, is you want to continue that journey for the people who are interested enough to engage with you where the new screenings are. Building that email list is essential. And that's something I think I'm going to make sure we we are very focused on for our next screenings.
Do you remember the old clipboards that all the producers
Yes.
had? A clipboard with a lined paper saying, please keep me informed about this film, and pass that, have people pass it to the audience while you have the afterward Q&A. That's what I would recommend. It's so valuable.
Pen, paper, and a clipboard.
That's
That's never going to be obsolete. Let's get these emails going. And yeah, and in the act of doing that, that's engagement, and that's also you're thinking about, a lot of what I'm describing is continuing this storyline. But there really what you're doing is you're making a film not for journalists and festivals, though that's so important. You're making a film for the audience. And this is the core audience, the people that come to see your film. And their word of mouth is important as social media, because they had an experience that you participated in with them. So having those email addresses, yeah, absolutely.
Jonah,
Noted, Carol. Yeah, a paper with a nice intro. Like, let's
yeah.
stay engaged here.
Zachary, Jonah Berger wrote a book called Contagious: How to Make Things Go Viral. And it's a great book. But when you close the last page and put the book down, you think word of mouth is still the best marketing tool in the world.
Yeah.
So, what you have at a festival like that with an audience is word of mouth. They are so important to continue to uh, to keep the film alive with them, because you never know what you need more money for. And they would come to your aid, I believe, financially.
Stay connected, right? That's what that is. That email list and everything else is staying connected. Keep telling the story, not just of your film, but what you're saying is tell the story of you as a filmmaker, as a storyteller for future projects. So
Exactly.
you're not just collecting followers, you're building relationships, right?
Exactly. This is the new world for filmmakers. We have to be attached to a filmmaker who, knowing we know this filmmaker, we know he will bring us or she will bring us the information we want. I see that as a future way for filmmakers. And I want to see little short 2 minute, why did you start to make this film, and what is your connection to the material?
Mhm.
Because then that really connects us to you personally. And I see that as the future.
Absolutely. It's storytelling, right? You know, you're, you don't want social media to be advertised. We're talking about a lot of things, but we're talking about social media. And, I've created these behind the scenes videos, and I recommend everybody doing that. Even if you're just writing a script, document what you're doing in a way that can be told, but not for promotion or marketing for your film. uh, you want it to become I think what you're saying is you want it to be an extension of the filmmaking experience. Behind the scenes moments they have the potential of being viral. You'll notice when you look I like Instagram, you'll notice when you go to behind the scenes content of people, on set, preparing for a scene, or those that content has a higher rate of following and likes than most things I see on my feed. Why is that? Because we're vicariously looking at how things are done. We're all of us, no matter what level of our career, I'm always aspiring and curious about how things are done. So, yeah, you're building it, you're doing something more than just advertising, but you're creating moments that tell who you are, how you're telling, what your team is doing, and how you're creating something. And so when people finally see your film, they have kind of a new starting point for how they see what you've done. And in this film and in others, right, Carol? Because that's really what
Yeah,
we're talking about is, you know,
yeah.
this is not just one enterprise. This is you know, you put your heart, your soul, and all your money into making a film, but we're filmmakers and we're talking about the kind of story, the values we have in telling them, and what it was like. So yeah, that's all, you know, translates into word of mouth, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It's really important. So that takes to my next question. How can filmmakers attach influential supporters where like executive producers, nonprofit organizations, experts, all of these people that you need to help you fill up seats in America or Germany or wherever you want. But how do you think that people can go after influential supporters?
Well, when you identify who those people might be, start to ask what intersects with their values and their mission. So if you start to say what's naturally what your story and who you are as a filmmaker and what you've made intersects, connects with their values, what their mission is, that's a good starting place because then you're not just asking someone to endorse your film or watch it. You have a shared purpose, and that creates something authentic, a potential partnership, because that's what you're asking for, right? You want something that's authentic that starts in a place that's much stronger than someone, you know, reacting to something that you've created to get them to promote your film. It's you're asking for someone to come to your film, your table, because what you're doing naturally resonates with them.
And well said. Okay, so let's talk about what does a filmmaker need for self-distribution? Share with us what you feel are the most important things to focus on.
Yeah, I wrote this down because I think it's important to be very targeted with this. You know, I wrote this down when we were getting towards picture lock, and which, by the way, we talked about picture lock earlier. That is, it's less of a a clear point, right? Because we remember when picture lock was because you had your work print and you locked it because you were going to create a print and a sound mix from it, and so we can always open up picture lock based, which is a nice thing about festivals is you can get a little bit of a response either from your team yourself or from people there to deep, you know, shape a little bit more some moments. But you're talking about self distribution and what you need to do. Like I think it's always like I'm always bringing with me either on my phone, right, making notes about what we need to add to the list of what's required to self-distribute or get it to, you know, to get it to a large stage, and that changes as you're having people watch it. But I mean, I think the same things in, you know, in the 21st century apply. You need a website, you need a trailer, you need artwork, you need a press kit, and as you had said, and I just added to my list, is you need an email list, email mailing list. And as you go, we talk about community partners, you know, and that's a growing list as well. But you need to start thinking about just something beyond just traditional, what we think of as distribution, getting it on a streamer. You know, you have educational distribution, thinking about who the partners are there, thinking about maybe getting it to, you know, um, potentially a sales agent. That's not always the case for every film, but you need to think about how those different levels of outreach, what your strategy is to get it to institutional viewings like libraries, NGOs, and you know, really what you're doing is back to what we talked about before is if you're an independent filmmaker, you're building things. You're not having things come to you. So being organized, having that website, trailer, artwork, press kit, email mailing list, that list of partners, a strategy for, you know, grassroots distribution, and a you know, strategy for going even bigger if you can. you're building that basically that infrastructure that allows your film to succeed.
Wow, great. Thank you so much for that. So what is your distribution plan for Brace for Oblivion? Are you planning on reaching? How are you going to reach all the audiences and earn revenue?
Yeah, earning revenue. I know. Yeah, I should be focused on that. And that right now, Carol, I got to be honest with you. Right now, my primary focus is the festival rollout. This is a time to strike because, every festival is an opportunity to introduce the film to a new audience, start that process we're talking about over. And in doing that, that experience, that connection with audiences, creating that new audience, you build momentum. And those relationships we talk about building during the screening, you strengthen them. And you also learn from that experience. So, the team that comes to these festivals, we're all taking notes and we're seeing what resonates because this is word of mouth. This is a connection. And festivals, also create discovery. They create an opportunity for press. They create an opportunity for, discovery from an audience. And you can learn from that. So the festival strategy is a part of our distribution strategy. Each screening helps expand the reach, potentially new supporters and advocates, and it opens the doors to people who could help find, distribution opportunities, um, like not beyond the streamers, broadcasters potentially, um, other ways of, not just looking at one platform to get your film out, but you need to be disciplined. And right now we're focusing on uh, thinking about what that festival distribution can give to the film as we just focus on rolling it out from one territory to the other.
Well, there's a friend of mine who went, she took her film to 50 film festivals. So I said, why on
Wow,
that is such a trek. She
that's
said,
great.
yes, Carol, but I found the market through the festivals by talking to the audience afterwards. Where do you think this film belongs? And so this was a film, a Big Sophie. It was about her grandmother. You may remember Maury Warshawski, who used to help documentary filmmakers. So this is about his mother who refused to give up when the whole shopping center closed down. She kept her little sewing shop open, and at 80 some odd years old went to work every day. So the audience has told her that uh, people in prison loved this. You
Oh,
take
wow.
prisons because these people, it showed determination and respect for their own work. And it also taught her to take it to hospitals where people were recovering. They took energy from this woman's determination not to be shut down. It was her ability to interview people at the festival on where this film belongs. And that's an idea you might be able to use.
It sounds like what she did is shaped her distribution strategy during that 50 film odyssey is what was working, what was the path forward. And it seemed probably, I'm not sure if that's what she initially intended is to show it to, you say, to uh, people incarcerated. Is that what you said, Carol?
Yeah.
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 I don't know. Maybe that was clear to her in the beginning, but I imagine it became, even if it were, it was crystal clear by somewhere within that festival run. And yeah, you also get to get better at it. You get to get better at defining what your film is, what its salient features are, what it's best at. And that's also good for you as a filmmaker because one of the hats we talked about was, you're kind of an entrepreneur as a filmmaker. And I just wanted to get back to one important thing in 2026, going to 2027. So much of your audience is going to be faced with, I would say, the emotional pain of rejection, of not having the spot for the film that you would think is deserved because of the math here. And the film festivals are looked at as a gateway for discovery. And what I would say is strategy is important, perseverance is important, but really This is a part of your story. It's finding a way forward to connect with your audience. And if you remember that film festivals may feel like a gate that's hard to surmount that is in front of you, I've heard,
Yeah.
is instead looking at it as this is just film festivals are partners once you're in, but also think about what the goal is. You're connecting with an audience, like you said, finding a way to connect with it. Because, as you told me when I first met you, is films have a life of their own. And you mentioned that in the context of making it. I was about to start shooting in a prison in Alabama. And I remember that when we were in Alabama and midway through shooting, another a jail in Maricopa County started incarcerating women. And I started to think, I think I called you and I said, "Do you think I should go to Maricopa County?" And you said yes. And I thought, well, I'm funding this myself. I'm in my 20s. I don't have a lot of money. We're back then, we're shooting on film. Should I take the leap? And the answer was yes. This is filmmaking, not film distribution, but or rolling out into a film festival. But it's the same thing that applies. You don't know what's ahead of you. The traditional pathways to get your film to an audience. And remember, that's essentially what we're talking about. When we're talking about a festival experience rollout. Is it's that, and your film might have a life of its own beyond making it and beyond rolling it out to a film festival. It might also have its moment in a way that you don't understand later. So, keep your chin up, keep moving forward, and also just think about what your story is for rolling out the film and what's connecting with people, because there is always going to be a hunger for good storytelling. And you've got something. And, what is it about it that differentiates your film from the other 16,000 that may submit to Sundance or another film festival?
So it's all about story, story, story.
Yeah, I think so. It's
Me
also, yeah, and I think we talked about before, it is. And I think it's also about flexibility. And, we talked about last time when you're making a film is, stepping into a storytelling vortex, I sort of said, I made that up is just, but it's seeing what's around you, it's putting yourself in the middle of it, understanding you're giving up control, and you may see something flying around in front of you that is the best maybe part of something that's bigger, and you might be frustrated that you're on a path that you're not in control of. But that's part of it. That's part of making the film. That's part of distributing the film. It's also part of a way of connecting with your audience. So understand that disruption and chaos, that's part of storytelling.
Oh my gosh, people need to hear that.
Do we
Really,
have a choice? I
no,
don't think
it
so.
always happens. Thank you so much, Zachary, for being with us today. And thank you for the tremendous contribution that you've made to all of us through your work. Your life has been dedicated to bringing the truth to the screen through documentary filmmaking, and you've repeatedly gone where others might not go, and you've introduced us to people whose courage and humanity deserve to be recognized. With American Chain Gang, you exposed an injustice that needed to be seen, and with Brace for Oblivion, you've given Ukrainian soldiers and civilians an opportunity to share their experiences, their sacrifices, their strength, and their remarkable solidarity with the world. So you've raised the consciousness of the planet through your dedicated work. I know you gave 4 years of your life to this film. So you did all of this without knowing whether the film would be accepted, distributed, or even being seen. And that is the courage of a true documentary filmmaker. And I'm so proud to have known you all these years, and I'm deeply grateful for your friendship and for the extraordinary body of work that you've given us. So we congratulate you on winning the Best International Documentary at the Galway Festival, and we look forward to seeing Brace for Oblivion reach audiences around the world. So thank you, Zachary, for your courage and compassion and your lifelong commitment to the truth. And to our audience, please join us next week for more of the Art of Film Funding. Thank you, Claire, and thank you, Zachary.
Thank you so much.
Now, in its second edition, Carol Dean's popular book, The Art of Film Funding, has 12 new chapters to cover all areas of film financing and how to avoid expensive pitfalls. Learn how to start with an idea and end with a trailer, how to make an ask for money, create your story structure and your trailer, legal advice, fair use, successful crowdfunding, how to ask for music rights, and what insurance you can't shoot without. Available on Amazon under Carol Dean and at FromTheHeartProductions.com. I want to remind our listeners that David Raiklin is a brilliant and talented award-winning musician who scores films and can compose music for a trio or for a full orchestra. David is a very good friend to the independent filmmaker and comes highly recommended by From the Heart Productions. If you need music to help tell your story, please contact him at davidraiklin.com. That's David, RAIKLEN.com. And Carol and I want to thank you for tuning in to The Art of Film Funding. Please visit our website at FromTheHeartProductions.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter. Good luck with your films, everyone.